Okay, so this question today is trust, or it's a topic. It's a huge topic. I realized once I wrote that blog a few days ago that's in my newsletter about trust, I could write a book about trust, but I'm not going to just deliver a speech today. I'm going to invite us into a dialogue and an inquiry about our own relationship to this very personal and yet very global kind of topic about trust. So first thing I want to ask you to sit with for a minute is think of the people you trust. Just bring to mind a couple of people, if there are a couple or more people you trust. And would you write in the chat your completion of this sentence stem? I trust people who. You can write the whole stem. I trust people who. No, like I trust people who keep my confidences. Or I trust people who I know won't hurt me intentionally. Just whatever your things are. I think it would be really interesting. Do what they say. Listen well. Who you've known for a long time. People who listen to me and keep agreements. So these are good. Whose actions match their words. Are consistent. People who feel safe, who listen, who have compassion. Gee, I'm reading these and I'm going, boy, am I trustworthy to that person? So notice how you internally respond as you read these. Do you compare your answers, like what you would have written, to what other people write? That's a common, I'll call that a listening pattern, even though we're not doing a listening exercise right now. I often ask people in groups, notice how you're listening. Are you listening to kind of challenge? Do you compare yourself to others? Are you listening to kind of project what the deeper meanings are, almost to mind read? Just notice how you're responding to what you're reading here. People who share vulnerability. Who would rather feel pain than pain others. Who hold space non-judgmentally with love. How many of us do that consistently? That was one to really ponder. Now, in the blog, I suggested that people with a high need for control, maybe I can define that in a minute, but people who have a high need for control are hard to trust. So if you think of people now who are hard to trust in your world, I'm not trying to sell that idea at all. What I mean by a high need for control is people who often unconsciously, it's not like they're bossy necessarily, although bossiness, the typical thing you think of when you think of a control freak or a micromanager. I'm not thinking of those obvious things as much, although those are symptoms of a high need for control in your personality. But people who have trouble taking risks into the unknown. For example, speaking a difficult truth would be where you can take a risk and step into the unknown. A person with a high need for control would want to control the outcome of their communications. They either wouldn't take that risk because they can't control the outcome, like telling your partner you want to have an open marriage and you know that they don't, type of thing. I mean, that's a high risk conversation. So some people would keep that kind of thing to themselves. So I call these personality patterns of kind of keeping it to yourself or doing other things to kind of manage the outcome, like smiling when you're giving critical feedback. You're trying to show the person that you don't mean them any harm, that sort of thing. It's still kind of controlling the outcome. Sometimes controlling the outcome is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does reveal about the speaker that I'm not quite willing to let the chips fall where they may. So I think we all have a certain amount of control needs in our personality, but I've put forth the idea that to the extent that you have a high need for control, maybe it's hard for others to trust you. Of course, this may have something to do with your basic trust in life, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes. So I want to look now at, I fear people who, so we do like trust people who, would you put in the chat, I fear people who, and anything that comes up for you, people that you would not trust, or you could say, I mistrust people who. See, I would call mistrust some form of fear, but not everybody would use that term for it. So mistrust might be more user-friendly here. So let's look in the chat again and see what we come up with I mistrust. People who are superficial, people who hide the truth, people who get angry easily and often misunderstand what was said, people who try to control, not willing to listen, who blame, who won't go deep in conversation, are not transparent, try to be liked too much, try to please, people who enjoy causing pain. Feel how you feel in your body as you read some of these. That one just hit me, people who enjoy causing pain. It was like my whole system went kind of, whoa. So notice your own reactions as you read these things. Micromanage me, unpredictable. And I noticed my own inner reaction to the word unpredictable. I'm just kind of smiling about unpredictable. Yeah. Some people really do just come out with a whole other personality sometimes. But then to some extent, wouldn't it be nice if we were all a little more unpredictable? That's the other side of my self-talk. If we were free, if we created a little more safety in the culture for a greater range of ourselves to be. Okay, there's somebody making quite a bit of noise. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I'd rather not compete with that. Speak negatively. Okay, I'll mute somebody here. Who corner me with words or physicality. Wow, feel into that one. Okay, we've just looked at a whole bunch of people's responses here. What we trust, what we mistrust. I wrote a book a long time ago. Gosh, it came out in 83 called Beyond the Power Struggle, where I looked at how different personality styles mistrust each other sometimes because what one person has overlearned, the other person has underlearned. Okay, so with the backdrop of what we've just kind of warmed up with, people we trust and don't trust, there's the saver and the spender. That's one polarity. The whole book was about the 7 dimensions that cause conflict in relationships. And so I'll just pick 2 of those dimensions today to get us into this concept of the saver and the spender. So the saver, let's just say with money, it could be saving energy to your own energy, like being a little bit tight with your time with people, that kind of thing. But mainly the saver we'll talk about in terms of money. Is quite, thrifty, save for a rainy day. Don't be a self-indulgent. Don't buy it if you don't need it. So that's the saver. The spender is more, well, I was married to a spender once, and his idea was be in constant exchange with the world, consume, but also you're giving back a lot. And so, just a high exchange rate. And he was a spender with money too, probably more than he had, in my judgment. But it was an interesting polarity because I'm a saver and he was a spender. And he had underlearned, let's call it saying no to himself about a want, okay? Which is, maybe I had overlearned saying no to myself about some of my wants, maybe a little stingy with myself. Okay, so I'm warming you up here to think, which are you more in your close relationships, or perhaps even in a business relationship, but it's got to be a little bit in relationship to something. Are you more of a saver like me? Could you just raise your hand, those of you who have your screen on? I'd like to see how many fellow savers there are. We might talk about this a little bit. Savers. Okay. And how about spenders? Raise your hand. I'm not raising mine. Okay. Spenders, not so many. I was going to say, well, thanks, Nancy. I was going to say, I just realized as I'm looking at all the hands up for savers, and of course, this is to my point as well, I trust savers more than spenders. I trust people like me. But as I alluded to in my marriage example, a lot of times we're attracted to people in relationship where they've overlearned something that I've underlearned. Like we could call it like saying yes to himself. So I kind of mistrust, though, his decision-making process around money, and to the extent that there's some real data. Now think about this, perhaps in terms of marriage or commitments like that, intimate relationships. How interdependent, if I mistrust somebody because they have a different style, saver versus spender, how interdependent do I want to be with this person? Marriage is a high level of interdependence typically, but you can define your finances any way you want. And we did, and it worked fine. But there were a lot of lessons still in how you bump up against somebody with your opposite type. So you can choose how interdependent you want to be with somebody. And if you assess that their style is so different from you and they're going to create conflict over and over and over. Because when I say interdependent, it means I'm agreeing to kind of be in a trust relationship with you, or at least trust that we can work out conflicts and not make decisions in a rash way. so that we can have that patience that requires to hold differences. And most people are a little deficient in that one. So see what's coming up now. And I'm gonna open it up now. You can unmute yourself if you have a comment or a question about anything that's come up for you so far. And if you don't, I'll move on a little bit more. But anything coming up for you? Even about the other exercises, you know, it doesn't have to be about this polarities concept.
Well, hi, Susan, it's Darcy. The thing that's coming up for me is I'm in negotiations with one of my landlords right now, and for my work, and this person keeps changing their mind.
It's muted.
Yeah, they keep changing their mind. Okay, so
Literally, like literally yesterday says, you know, oh, well, you could stay as long as you'd like. And, you know, yes, then the next day says, well, you know, one day you could have a 3-month lease or a 3-year lease, the next day a 3. And I'm feeling very mistrustful of this person. They're not, it's really up for me right now.
sure. And that's a good example of assessing how interdependent. I mean, this you're without thinking it consciously, maybe, but you're assessing, you know, do I want to do business? Do I want to do business with this person? What do I want to do business with this person is very similar to do I want to marry a person? You know, it's requires a certain amount of mutual interdependence. And do I want to be interdependent with somebody who's always changing their mind? I mean, you may not have much choice there, Darcy. I don't know the details, but in what we can learn and what we need to look at here is, am I going to go into a relationship where I have a lot of mistrust? And of course, then what are my options? But that's what it brings up for me. Do you have any other, like, yes, buts or any other thing, Darcy?
Well, yes, but I have no choice.
Yeah.
I'm already in it. Or if it's a relationship, oh yes, but I'm already in this, that, you know, not that Doug's sitting here off camera.
Hi, Doug. It's okay.
So that's where I'm at. Like, I
Yeah,
have no choice.
no
There
choice.
brings so much uncertainty, and I have to have certainty because, you know, I provide jobs.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to a little later how to build trust and how to repair trust. Now, I don't know if those remarks that I get into will address your particular situation, but hang on. I feel for you, darling. Gosh. Any other comments?
Hey, Susan, it's Karen.
Hi,
Hi.
Karen.
What's coming up inside of me is when you asked the first question about who I trust, I immediately wanted to say myself. And then I realized that most of my challenges have come because I don't trust myself.
Yeah.
And it's something I've been working on for a long time because I try to work from, like, you know, trusting my own intuition and my own gut instinct, but I often don't do it. I often trust what other people say, even though inside myself, I don't feel like it's true for me, whatever they're saying, but I often concede to other people, even though, and then it's because I don't trust what's inside of me.
Yeah,
So that's
I'm
really
so
up to me.
appreciative. I'm so appreciative of you for modeling this, because many people don't trust themselves, but they don't know it. They don't admit it. So it's super important to stand on the ground you're standing on, which is a lot of times I yield to other people and forget to check in with myself and a bunch of stuff like that. So when you know that, you're armed with a little bit of strategy that sort of says like, well, don't jump into agreements to collaborate or to be anything with somebody without saying, hey, I think I need time to think about it. Like some people really need to be very careful about entering into any kind of agreement when they're in the aura of the other more powerful, let's say, person. And let me show a hand, just I want to reinforce this. How many people have kind of learned that lesson, maybe even the hard way? And you used to jump in too fast. Yeah, just show a hand if you want to. I used to, but had to learn that, and so many people have to. Now that's only one. Yeah, let's really look at these hands. Thanks. That's only one situation that that brings up like a little tip that brings up oh, I have tools for dealing with lack of self-trust. I want to add a few more things about basic self-trust. I'm going to put that in now. I was going to save that till a little later. But I want to, because of your question, Karen. So psychologist Erik Erikson posited the 8 stages of life. The first stage was trust versus mistrust in his model. Some of you back in Psychology 101, you might have learned this, or if you took personality theory in college. Most of us probably haven't thought of Erik Erikson in a long time. But the idea is at the it's the same stuff as attachment parenting is now coming up with, which is if you're securely attached at the beginning of your life to a reliable, loving parent figure, you're going to have more basic trust in your personality, in your, you could almost say in your being, in your way of relating to life. It's as if, because you've been co-regulated by a reliable other, there's a bunch of things that the because is. One is your nervous system develops stronger wiring between the part of the brain that's basically afraid. It says, should I trust this situation? What's going on here? The reptilian part of the brain, and the cerebral prefrontal cortex, which has more ability to be present and actually see more data, is less upset by things. But some babies come into the world and they're just upset. Their nervous systems don't have that self-calming neural pathway, because they never were co-regulated enough in the beginning to have that safety and security for those neural pathways to develop, because the first 3 months of life, your brain is still developing. And those are the most essential months of life, folks. There's things we can do to rewire our brains as adults. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but it's also much more detailed in my books, From Triggered to Tranquil and 5-Minute Relationship Repair. Especially the 5-Minute Relationship Repair book goes a lot into brain psychology and then how to rewire these insecure neural circuits. But, are we fucked if we didn't have co-regulation in the first 3 months of life? No, but it's important as adults to come to terms with that. And of course, it's not a black and white situation. It's not like you either were co-regulated or you weren't. There's a continuum for all of us. So when I do this exercise with my groups where we look at the basic things that all children need to grow up healthy, most of us have had some of those things, and we haven't had others of those things that children need. But back to this sort of basic trust idea. When you've had that co-regulation, it also, besides creating the conditions for good neural development, for brain wiring to develop normally and in a healthy way. Besides that, I believe that early bonding experiences with a parent figure, a nurturing figure, you begin to develop kind of an inner nurturer, an inner part of yourself that says, honey, calm down. This is actually a pretty safe situation. Just breathe. I mean, you develop an inner supportive, nurturing voice. Okay, so what if you didn't have that? My recent work is all about reparenting yourself, because I think most of us need a degree of reparenting, a degree of finding when you're upset. Who else is in here? I'm upset. But just when I can say the words I'm upset, there's a witness there. There's a voice that's noticing you're upset. So you're not completely identified with the upset. Once you're able to notice, this is a development that all of us can travel now, if we haven't started to travel it. This is developing an inner good mother, activating the good mother archetype that is in everyone. I've said on other occasions, and I want to repeat it here, I have met some clients who had the absolute worst, zero negative parenting, like horrible stuff you wouldn't believe. And they still are able to find inside themselves the good mother archetype. So this is a little bit of a mystery to me, because, as I said before, what I think goes on is if you have good co-regulation, then of course you have a good mother image, good mother archetype already activated from a very young age. But there's sort of a mystery. There's sort of a humanity that seems like it's beyond personal development. This is the Jungian archetype system. It's the collective unconscious. There's something in the collective, and he called them archetypes. And there's the good father archetype too, but we're just going to talk about the good mother archetype right now, which is the one that we most of us need to some degree to continue to develop. And that's the part that you develop that by first you say, oh, I notice I'm upset. I notice I'm angry. I notice I'm not feeling good today. Right away, you've got a noticer. Then you begin from the noticer to kind of zoom out a little bit more, and you can use some breathing techniques or some kind of I just call them self-awareness techniques, where you have more space inside yourself.
I'm okay. What is this about?
Okay, let's see who I need to be muting.
It's a man, it's somebody named John, Susan.
I got him. Thanks, I found him. So this is how you become a more spacious presence to yourself. You start by noticing, then you go, oh, there's something I can do here to make a little more space. And as the noticer, you can tap into a kind of empathy for that upset part. Sometimes I have to suggest this to people, and it's almost just like reading a book that you don't understand yet. And I found this myself. Sometimes I'll read a book when I'm in college, and then I'll read it 20 years later, and geez, now I understand it. That was just gibberish when I was in college. And so this may be like that for many people. the stuff I'm saying, but I'm suggesting that there's a possibility here of opening up more space inside yourself to hold space for that upset part. And that's the same thing that rewires the brain so the upset part can receive neural impulses from the prefrontal cortex and have a little checks and balances. Go, okay, what do we need to do here? You are safe or you're not safe. I mean, there might be a war zone that you're in, but most of the time when this upset part comes, it's in an interpersonal relationship with somebody who you either love or have some kind of ongoing relationship with, because those are the kind of things that trigger us the most. So we're really talking here about once you feel that intense mistrust, let's call it, like I'm not safe here, you can do some work to expand your sense of the witness, the compassionate, good mother, that sort of thing. So the word self-compassion is kind of batted around a lot these days. That's kind of what it means in my world. It's not just being nice to yourself in a kind of, okay, don't criticize yourself. I mean, that's all good stuff, but it's more the deeper work of developing more capacity inside yourself. That's to me what we're here for. We're here for developing more capacity to handle more of life. So that's my riff on self-trust. Thanks, Karen, for stimulating that. So another, I want to just go back to the saver spender thing for a minute, because there's another interesting polarity that causes frequent conflict in relationships, and I want to see if any of you have experienced this one. It's the get it done people, and this mostly shows up in the business context. The get it done is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just kind of, do your best and get it done. But then there's the do it right people. And this comes in with decision making, like with a married couple or something, trying to decide, how to decorate their house or whatever. A person will go into the store and they'll say, yeah, we want that, and that. The do it right person will have to do a lot of research, what chemicals are in this carpet, and let's really check off a lot of different boxes here. So how many people here identify with the get it done style? I want to see if this is even relevant for people. Like, I'm a get it done person. Get it done people are like managers and salespeople, or in a business. And so that we're raising our hand if we're the get it done type. And so we quick deciders usually. Okay. How about do it right people? Raise your hand. Do it right people are more like the engineers, that type of thing. And then think about it. Who do you trust more? Well, I trust certain people. I tend to trust the get it done people in certain areas and the do it right people more in other areas. But think about it yourself. Any relationship you've been in here, because the idea that I was getting across here is when you have a personality style difference, you might just automatically have mistrust. No matter how long you've been married, there's sort of this, I don't trust how this person makes decisions, or I don't trust how this person processes information. I don't know if that comes up for any of you, but it certainly comes up for me. I really have learned to consciously decide who I want to be interdependent with and in what areas. Like there was one of my husbands, a different husband than the other one, although I guess he was a spender too. Well, he was, in my judgment, completely inexperienced in the world of finance, in the world of investment, in the world of making money decisions. Okay. And I've done a lot of real estate investing. When I was 29, I was financially independent from passive income and stuff. Of course, I lost that later because I got involved with him, but that's a whole other story. So I'm just saying, just I've learned to be quite mindful of getting too interdependent and trusting somebody in areas where maybe I would trust him in so many other areas. I mean, this guy was an amazing human being in terms of all the things he could do. He was an inventor, and we sailed for 2 years in the South Pacific. And if there was a storm, he could climb up the mast and fix the sail in the middle of a storm. He had tremendous courage and, kind of an animal, which was nice in my 40s. But we lost a lot of money because we got married, and he was in charge of the investments. So, maybe I have a particularly dramatic tale to tell about the idea of being at choice around who you trust with what domains. And my current partner has trouble seeing. And so, I have to make decisions. I mean, he doesn't have total trouble, but about how much to trust him driving. I love to be the passenger, but I have to always kind of assess how's your eyesight? How are you seeing? So like in some ways you could say it's a tremendous act of trust for me to get in the car with him. But that's a joke because his seeing's not that bad. I mean, he sees perfectly out of one eye. Okay. So like, I'm not an idiot. What I'm using my own life here to illustrate that you do have choice, and just to maybe reflect on your own life. Marriage, sometimes you just jump in and you say, oh, we're going to trust in all areas. Well, you don't have to. I didn't have to. With that other marriage, I didn't, for other reasons, different dynamics. But I love the fact that I've been married so many times because there's so much learning. There's so much more learning in a really long term, like 10 years, well, more or less, or 8 to 10 years, different marriages, 4 of them. That interdependence with another human being where you really, and we were all very close. I never had one of these detached relationships. I mean, it was always extremely communicative. And I just can't tell you, I couldn't have had a better life for learning about relationships.
So,
Susan,
So don't worry about me, folks.
Susan,
Yeah, sure. Let's hear from some
this
time.
is Lynn, and hi, thank you for doing this. What keeps coming up for me, and I love your comments on this around that term, do you trust someone? It's like, do you trust them to do what? There are some people that have, like, I was married to somebody who drank a lot, and I could trust him to pretty consistently not do what he would say he would do. And so in that sense, I could trust him. I mean,
I wouldn't call that trust, but go ahead.
I couldn't trust him to have my best interests at heart. I couldn't trust him to think of me first. Those kinds of things I couldn't trust him for. So I wonder if it's almost like there's an implied, to me, when I'm hearing this, the thing, do you trust someone, is do I trust them to care for me in a particular way?
That's right.
And
that's what we seem to be finding here in our little research. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So, when I go there with my thoughts around, okay, can I trust someone? I love what you're saying about interdependence, because the next thing that comes up for me is, well, can I trust them most of the time, or how much of the time to care for me in a particular way? Because we're all humans and we can't all do exactly the same thing all the time. As much as I might like to care for somebody else, I can't always care for them in a particular way. And so that's what's coming up for me. And I'm curious about
good.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so my point, one of my main points up to now is just kind of what you're saying, Lynn, is to know what trust means to you, and can I trust him in these different domains, and just to, to do a little bit of introspection around that. So you do become so life happens, and of course we do become interdependent with people who are not totally trustworthy in every area. But if your thing is to care for me, let's say, that's your bottom line for trust, or to behave in ways that don't harm me. And let's say an alcoholic partner who's in the throes of their addiction to some degree. Okay, sure, they have, all day when they're fine or something, but you never know. So I think addiction's a really good thing to bring in here. So I trust him most of the time, or 30% of the time, or whatever it is. I mean, you pretty much, it's usually unconscious, but I'm trying to make this process a little more conscious for us. But unconsciously, okay, most of the time I just say that, okay, so we'll get married, because it's pretty good most of the time. So we do that, and we realize trust is a risk. So a minute ago, I was saying, you have choice around what domains you trust somebody in, but that's overly simplified. I want to make that point because, you can exit, you can always exit a relationship where there's not sufficient trust for you to relax. Unless you're used to a life where you're constantly anxious and upset all the time, and then maybe you'll pick somebody where you can't relax, because you need to develop this inner self-compassion and do that trigger work that I'm so fond of talking about. But so you more or less trust somebody, and it's a risk. So when you married this guy, Lynn, I'm assuming it was a risk. And you probably kind of knew it. Anything you want to say about
I mean,
retrospect about it?
I was in some pretty deep denial about the risks, and I didn't want to see them and see the risks. I wanted to see what I wanted to see. And so certainly in hindsight and retrospect, I can see, oh yeah, they were all over the place, those signs, but I wanted what I wanted. I wanted a dream that didn't actually exist.
Yeah, we know about denial, don't we? We all know about denial in one form or another. Yeah. I was lucky enough to have a boyfriend in high school, and we later got married. We were very close all through high school, and he was my best friend, and his father was an active alcoholic. So I was lucky enough to learn right away that a man can love his family very much, can love his son, his teenage son, my, ex-husband very much, but he can do terrible things to hurt them and embarrass them and all that, that he couldn't be relied upon to be consistent. And I had compassion for this, but I never wanted anything close to that in my life. I would never take that risk personally. You know what I mean when I say that? That's where my denial was never, if I'm dating somebody and they're starting to drink a little too much, they're going to hear about it from me, and I'm going to keep an eye on it, and pretty soon we're not going to be seeing each other anymore. That's just, that's my story. Everybody's got a different story around this, but it's really, addictions are really tough around with regard to trusting. And so I'm expecting, as I'm talking, you guys are kind of comparing your experience to mine or to Lynn's and so forth. Any other comments or questions? I'm going to go after the comments or questions. I'm going to go to building trust. So how do you build trust from the ground up? And maybe we'll say a few words about repairing trust. So that's where I'm headed here. But I just want to hear from you if there is anything at this point.
I just wanted to say something about trust as far as self-trust,
Yeah.
because I notice that when I'm so concerned about trusting another person, really my bigger fear is that I sometimes can't trust myself to put my needs, my real adult needs ahead of my child needs, or like my fear that I need this person, I need this attachment with this person, and make that more important than my true attachment to myself. Like I need her, I think sometimes it's easy to get caught in fearing that separation, individuation thing, where it's not as important for me if I have to lose my connection with myself in order to have a connection with another person, then there's something I need to take a look at. And that's, I think, where trusting my choices and decisions comes into play in such an important way.
Well, you bring up something that's pretty universal here in your comments, which is the need for connection, the fear of being alone, the need to kind of feel close to somebody. And, so that need is pushing us toward joining with somebody. You could almost say, depending, sometimes you just run into people and there's some kind of chemistry and you, or mutual need or something, and you join without too much analysis, because there just is this biological need to pair. So how do we include that? That's, that can lead to, the thing called denial of my assessment that this person is somebody that maybe wouldn't be good for me. So these are, these are complicating factors. Life presents us with a lot of opportunities to just learn about life. So I don't have the answer for how to, balance the need for connection and bonding with a human with the need to be unharmed. Like I said, a relationship's always a risk. There's always some letting go into the we. And once you let go into the we, you gotta know how to handle yourself. And that comes back to self-trust. But you also gotta know how to, self-trust is like spending enough time with yourself, reflecting on an incident, because if you don't have like instinctual, good, trustworthy decisions, at least you might know enough to pause after you've had an interaction and go, how did that feel? How'd that feel in my gut, in my heart? Does this require any clearing conversation, any communication to try to understand where this other person was coming from and be heard about my wants and needs? So a lot of times, you have this impulse to join with another person, but I'm recommending now, so and somebody needs to be muted. I'll just mute some people here randomly. Yeah, when you know you're joining with somebody, being able to, or in an interaction, being able to reflect afterwards, because you can't quite trust yourself to always be there for yourself in the moment. But most of us can develop at least a reflective part of ourselves that reflects on the situation that we were just in. And I want to really encourage this. Like, how did that feel? What feels unfinished? What am I afraid to say? And those are the life skills that we need to build trust. Be able to reflect, and then to be able to go back and say what we feel and what we need and what we wanted but couldn't say at the time. These are the developments of a human being who can begin to relax in the world, relax enough. So, yeah, I'm really encouraging building self-trust through risking relationship. It's relationships are, of course, my container as my spiritual journey, my path to development. I find relationships, and especially intimate relationships, the quickest way to self-development, because they really confront you with, if you're got your eyes open, with, whoa, I need to learn how to deal with that. And that's a pain in the ass. I don't want to learn to deal. I don't want to have to learn to deal with that. And that's where a lot of us are. I don't want to have to learn to deal with that. I want my partner to change. And so I'm going to just spend the rest of my life complaining and wishing and fantasizing about, somebody else rather than dealing with my actual partner. So just check in with yourself. Some of this stuff doesn't relate to you yourself, but this is kind of common, the stuff I'm talking about. So let's go to how to build trust with a new person. And some of the things I already kind of alluded to when I was saying building trust for yourself. You have dating relationships. The act of dating is really a wonderful laboratory for studying trust and studying your own development of trust in others, trust in self. So what questions do you ask somebody when you're beginning to think of, and I'm assuming dating toward the selection of a mate of some sort. Even if it's only a mate for a certain amount of time and not a lifelong commitment, still you're dating for some kind of longish term interdependence. So what questions do you ask? I'm not going to ask for people to put things in the chat right now, but just think about this, because we're almost out of time. Do you say what you want in the dating relationship? And this could be any new relationship, because some of you are, way not into the dating thing for various reasons. And are you able to, as you get new data in the dating with this one person, are you able to adjust your expectations? Oh man, we've been together quite a long time, and I never saw how his anger can just come out over something that I totally don't understand where it came from. We've been together 8 months, and this is the first time I've seen that. Okay, so I'm adjusting my expectations now. We're already bonded. I'm already like totally in love. Can you adjust your expectations? You don't have to change your loving feelings, but can you adjust your expectations within a loving field? And then take back some responsibility and put it on yourself if there's certain things that you can't count on this other person for. if you can't count on this other person to help you feel safe all the time, how do you make yourself feel safe when the other person, I'm going to say, feels unsafe? These are really important developments to the building of trust, or the building of a trust relationship. Being able to rely on yourself sometimes, because you can't always get what you want from a partner. It's great to ask, though. You've got to go for it. But if you can't, and you've negotiated and you've been friendly about it and so forth, what do you got to depend on when other people fail you? There's your basic sense of trust in life, but there's this sense of, I can be there for myself. And what does that even mean? What does it mean? I can be there for myself when somebody else disappoints me. And that's a kind of thing that I think is prerequisite to the deep kind of trust we're going to be needing to be able to develop with our fellow humans as we go into the future. We're not going to have the luxury of long-term dating relationships to find things out. We're probably going to have to build trust relationships quicker. I know a lot of the business seminars now say, our seminar is about how to quickly build trust. And but you need all these other skills, such as being able to be there for yourself when the chips are down. You need all these other skills. Ask for what you want. Find out more about the other person. Empathize, ask questions, be really curious. If we're going to collaborate about solving the world's problems, so that's where I'm getting to, I believe all this work is getting us toward the development of a new human. Most of us are kind of in the remediation stage right now, partly because of imperfect attachment or imperfect meeting of our childhood needs. No parent was perfect. So we're all about doing this work of becoming a more evolved humanity. And I'm going to suggest that, for me at least, close personal relationships are the best laboratory for learning this, but the future humanity may have to develop quick, collaborative, cooperative relationships to solve problems that happen quickly and unexpectedly. So I want humanity to be ready for the future, even though I'm probably not going to be here. So I'm going to close with that. And hopefully I will see some of you next month. Let's see, January. Let me see what date January is. Give you that date. So it'll be the first Tuesday of January, I believe. Yeah, January 3rd, 10 o'clock Pacific time. Put that on your calendar. I don't know what the topic's going to be, but if there's topics that interest you, send them along. So thanks so much for being here with me today. Bye.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We love you. It's Darcy and Doug.